What if? It's a question that really gets the gears turning, doesn't it? Especially when we're talking about building, about architecture.
Definitely.
Today, we're diving into that fascinating realm of what could have been. The incredible structures, the really ambitious designs that never actually made it off the drawing board.
Phantom architecture. It's a great term for it.
Exactly. Existing just in plans, maybe models, but full of potential.
And in this deep dive, we're going to unearth some of the most compelling of these unbuilt masterpieces.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah, we'll explore not just why they remain visions, but also what those visions tell us about the people, the technology, the aspirations of their times.
It's like history through missed opportunities, in a way.
Kind of. History through unfulfilled potential, maybe.
And the reasons these architectural dreams stayed phantoms are just so varied, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking projects stalling because, funding dried up. Or maybe unexpected structural problems popped up.
Or just getting tangled in red tape, failing to get permissions.
Right. And then there were the classic stories, architects clashing with clients.
Happens all the time.
Or losing out in those high-stakes design competitions.
Yeah, or sometimes the creators themselves just changed their minds.
And some designs were maybe just seen as unsuitable for where they were meant to go.
Or simply ideas way ahead of their time, too radical, perhaps.
But the fact they weren't built, it doesn't mean they just disappeared.
Yeah.
Their power remains.
Exactly. These plans endure. They offer these compelling, sometimes really breathtaking glimpses into architectural ambition. Innovation, too. They remind us that the creative act in architecture isn't always about the finished thing. The ideas themselves can be incredibly potent, influential even.
Absolutely. And part of what makes them so captivating is just the sheer artistry of how they were presented.
Oh,
You
yeah.
see these rapid, almost sculptural sketches like Mendelssohn's stuff.
Or those beautiful rendered paintings, like Zaha Hadid's early work. They're often artworks in their own right.
They really are. And they have this incredible ability, as our sources point out, to make even the most seemingly, unthinkable buildings feel almost real, almost plausible.
Like that idea for a massive 19th century palace right on the Acropolis,
Yeah.
where the Parthenon is.
Exactly. Or a skyscraper stretching a full mile high. It boggles the mind.
What's really compelling is just how diverse these unbuilt projects are.
Right.
We can sort of categorize them. So in our exploration today, let's start with ideal city plans, these grand visions for whole urban environments.
Okay.
Then we'll zoom in on some ambitious individual structures, monumental stuff.
Got it.
And finally, we'll look at some genuinely forward-thinking proposals, designs that were really trying to tackle new urban challenges looking way into the future.
Okay, ideal city plans first then. Our sources mention these Renaissance concepts, often with perfect geometric forms. Circles, squares.
Yeah, often enclosed by defensive walls, which was crucial back then. And the streets would either radiate outwards from a center point or form these neat concentric patterns.
Very orderly.
Very. It was really a reaction against what they saw as the chaos of medieval cities, those tangled, narrow, winding streets. The aim was to impose architectural order, and they believed this reflected or could even create a more ordered government, a more ordered society.
So the city layout could shape society itself.
That was the strong belief, that the physical form had real social and political influence.
And sometimes these plans tackled real-world problems too, right? Like Leonardo da Vinci's split-level city.
Exactly. Proposed for Milan around 1490. This was a time when plague was a constant, terrifying threat. Milan had a really bad outbreak in the 1480s.
So his design was about health.
Primarily. What's fascinating is his focus on public health, even if his science wasn't quite right by our standards. He thought improving ventilation and waste disposal would combat miasma, bad air causing disease.
The old miasma theory.
Right. Wrong theory, but the outcome, better sanitation, was spot on for reducing disease spread.
Makes sense.
He envisioned this healthier city, about 30,000 dwellings. He argued it wouldn't just bring prestige to his patron, but also generate serious tax revenue.
Smart thinking. Linking design, health, and finance.
An early example of that connection, definitely.
Then there's Filarete's Oforzenda, 15th century. That one had a really striking star shape, didn't it?
It did, with a big central square. And the material we looked at mentioned a detailed manuscript with drawings of all the key buildings.
Giving us a really clear picture.
A very vivid picture. He planned everything meticulously. The cathedral, the ducal palace, even separate schools for boys and girls reflecting the times. And maybe the most intriguing bit is his House of Vice and Virtue, a brothel on the lower floors.
That's really slight.
Yep. And an Academy of Learning higher up, a pretty literal take on the duality of human nature, I suppose.
Wow. Yeah.
He also planned for markets on each main street to boost trade, and a canal system connected to a river for easy transport of goods.
Yeah.
Very practical.
Highlighting how vital waterways were back then.
Absolutely. Crucial for the economy.
Okay, jumping back a bit further, the ideal monastery plan of St. Gall, 9th century Switzerland. This one's interesting because it maybe wasn't for a specific place.
That seems to be the consensus. It's this huge parchment plan showing about 40 different structures,
Wow.
all logically laid out around the main church and cloister.
And all labeled.
Clearly labeled, yeah. Everything from the infirmary to the brew house. Scholars think it was probably drawn at Reichenau, a monastery in Austria, and sent to Abbot Gusberdus of St. Gall, who was planning to rebuild his monastery after a fire.
Oh, okay.
But the sheer scale and how comprehensive it is, it suggests it was more of an ideal layout. Like, here's the perfect setup for a monastic community regardless of the actual terrain.
A template, almost.
Exactly. The plan even shows details like the church's rounded ends, the apses, and a western entrance porch flanked by these distinctive circular towers.
Fascinating. Okay, and one more ideal city.
Yeah.
Johann Valentin Andreas Christianopoulos from 1619. A square city.
A square city, yeah. Surrounded by a moat and fortified walls with bastions. Defense was clearly still a major concern.
Understandable for the era.
Andre's vision is remarkably detailed. He imagined these concentric squares of buildings separated by lush gardens, and right at the center, a taller, circular building, like a focal point.
Interesting structure.
The outer quadrangle was purely functional, divided by activity, farming to the east, industry south, things like slaughterhouses and communal kitchens north.
Communal kitchens.
Yeah, and heat-intensive trades like forges to the west. The residential areas were actually quite minimalist. Small apartments, no cooking facilities, everyone used the communal kitchens.
Suggests a very communal lifestyle. Shared resources.
Definitely. Maybe discouraging too much private luxury.
And those gardens weren't just for show, were they?
Not at all. Andre really valued them. For food production, obviously, but also for beauty and education.
Education.
Yeah. Communal spaces had botanical specimens, medicinal plants, even aviaries and beehives, plus individual plots for residents.
A real focus on nature within the city.
And public health, too. Good ventilation, piped water, fireproofing with masonry walls, even a proposed central heating system.
Wow, central heating in 1619. That's pretty forward thinking.
It really was. The design also encouraged walking, with lots of covered arcades for shelter.
Okay, let's shift gears now. Let's focus on some of those really ambitious individual structures that never quite happened. Starting with Sir Christopher Wren's great model, designed for St. Paul's Cathedral, late 17th century, right after the Great Fire of London.
That's the one. Wren initially proposed a classical-style cathedral, Roman columns, semicircular arches, a dome, quite different from the traditional Gothic spire.
But that wasn't grand enough.
Apparently not. His first design was seen as too modest, too restrained for rebuilding such a vital symbol of London. There was this strong feeling that the new cathedral needed to be magnificent, a real statement aiming to outdo any other church in Europe.
So that led to the second design, the great model.
Yes, represented by this enormous wooden model over 20 feet long, a huge undertaking in itself.
And the design itself, it sounds impressive. Symmetrical layout, huge central space under the main dome.
Massive dome, yeah. And a grand portico at the west entrance with these big Corinthian columns. Very imposing.
So why didn't they build that one? It sounds spectacular.
It was. The model is a masterpiece. But ultimately, London's clergy felt it wasn't, well, traditional enough.
Wow.
They preferred something closer to established cathedral forms. So the great model, despite its brilliance, wasn't the St. Paul's we see today.
Interesting. That tension between innovation and tradition again.
Exactly. Plays out all the time in architecture.
Okay, next up. This sounds almost like fantasy. Charles-François Ribard de Chamous's Triumphal Elephant for Paris, 1758. A building literally shaped like an elephant.
It sounds whimsical, but Ribard was completely serious. He envisioned this colossal elephant as a tribute to King Louis XV.
Where would it have gone?
Right on the Champs-Élysées, where the Arc de Triomphe stands now. Imagine that. A giant elephant building.
Truly unforgettable.
Yeah.
And the inside was just as wild.
Oh, yeah. 2 full stories, main rooms tucked inside the elephant's body and head.
Clever.
The sources detailed this amazing mining room, designed to feel like a forest, Tree-like columns, a stream running through it, indirect lighting like sunlight, even foldable furniture.
And the ballroom.
The ballroom or throne room sounds equally imaginative, decorated with grotesque figures, murals, and lights designed to imitate stars and planets moving.
That's incredible, like an 18th century immersive experience.
Totally. And get this. He proposed megaphone-like devices in the elephant's ears to broadcast music out into the city.
No way.
Yep. The whole thing would have been a unique spectacle visually and audibly. It's interesting, too, Napoleon later considered a similar, though uninhabited, elephant monument for the Bastille.
Huh. The idea stuck around.
Seems so.
Okay, from a giant animal to pure geometry. Etienne Louis Bouillet's cenotaph for Isaac Newton, 1784. A massive sphere.
A huge, perfect sphere. It was a shocking proposal for its time, taller than the Great Pyramid, and absolutely no ornamentation.
Why no decoration?
The emphasis was entirely on the pure geometry, the simplicity of the form. It was meant to evoke this sense of profound purity, intellectual contemplation, honoring Newton's scientific genius.
Stripping architecture down to its basics, form and scale.
Exactly, to evoke deep emotion and thought. This idea of pure form has really resonated through architectural history.
And the interior concept was just as powerful, wasn't it? Like a planetarium.
During the day, yes, and at night, strategically placed lamps would create this display of stars, using architecture to suggest the cosmos, paying tribute to Newton. Really powerful concept.
It really is. Those drawings must be incredible.
They are incredibly evocative. They really convey the immense scale, the almost ethereal quality intended. Never built, but hugely influential on architectural thinking. The power of pure form, monumental scale.
Right. Okay, leaping forward about a century. Franklin Waldo Smith's National Gallery of Art and History for Washington, D.C., 1891. It sounds like a massive complex.
A truly colossal vision. Smith wasn't even an architect by trade. He was a hardware manufacturer, but deeply passionate about education and culture.
Wow.
He proposed this gigantic gallery, an interconnected complex with buildings in 8 different ancient architectural styles: Babylonian, Egyptian, Greek, Roman.
Yes.
The works.
And the idea was the building style matched the artifacts inside.
That was the core concept, yes. A Babylonian-style building for Babylonian artifacts and so on. Very direct, very literal.
Uh-huh. The notes mention a big central court, curving colonnades, kind of like St. Peter's Square, and concrete galleries.
Exactly. Smith got his inspiration from traveling all over Europe and the Middle East and from London's Great Exhibition. He even made detailed wooden models of ancient buildings himself.
He was really invested.
Totally. The plan included not just exhibition spaces, but workshops, too, for making models and reconstructions of historical stuff, Egyptian sphinxes, the houses of Luther and Mozart, you name it.
Incredible scope.
He argued passionately for its educational value, the prestige it would bring the U.S. He even talked about hidden benefits, lectures, publications, commissions for artists.
A real cultural hub. So different from Bouillet's pure sphere. This was maximalist history.
A complete contrast, yeah. Embracing a huge range of historical styles.
Okay, last one in this ambitious structure section. Carl Friedrich Schinkel's plan for a royal palace on the Acropolis in Athens. Early 19th century. That sounds controversial today.
It certainly would be. Schinkel's main goal, though, was harmony. He wanted it to relate to the existing ancient buildings. He even planned to mirror the Parthenon's portico in his design, but smaller, so it wouldn't overpower the temple.
Respectful in a way. His drawings sound beautiful.
They are lovely. They show a large but not overwhelming building, elegant reception rooms around courtyards, colonnaded facades echoing the classical style.
So why was this seemingly well-thought-out plan dropped?
Several things that came together. Cost was a big one, obviously.
Always is.
And logistical challenges on the site, like getting a reliable water supply up there, even though Schinkel proposed clever pumps. But maybe the biggest factor was this growing movement in Greece to preserve the Acropolis purely as an archaeological site. No new buildings.
Ah, the preservation movement kicking in.
Exactly. Growing opposition to anything that would fundamentally change that incredibly important historical landscape. Some critics felt it would basically turn the Parthenon into just a decorative feature for a modern palace.
I could see at that point.
So Schinkel's plans were shelved. They built the palace elsewhere. Tradition won out again, despite the impressive design.
That tension, yeah. It seems to pop up frequently, doesn't it? Innovation versus established norms.
It's a constant theme in architectural history.
Okay, let's turn our attention now to those forward-thinking proposals. Designs looking ahead, trying to solve emerging urban problems. First, John Martin's 3-level Thames embankment for London. 1842. He was already famous as a painter, right? Dramatic scenes.
Yes, Martin was huge for his large-scale, often apocalyptic paintings, very popular. And his embankment plan was equally ambitious in its own way.
3 levels, how would that work?
He envisioned this grand, multi-use embankment, a central roadway on the main level. Above that, elegant arcades for people to walk along.
Nice.
And below, crucially, a railway line and an integrated sewer system, all packed together.
Wow, that's comprehensive, combining transport, leisure, and sanitation.
Exactly. It was part of Martin's bigger push to modernize London, which was growing incredibly fast. He'd even proposed a plan earlier for clean water supply for the city.
So he was really thinking about public health and infrastructure.
Definitely. He saw the big picture. His embankment was this bold vision to improve transport, sanitation, and just the overall grandeur and function of London.
Following that, mid-19th century, Joseph Paxton's Great Victorian Way for London. Sounds like a modern transport project.
It really does seem quite prescient. Paxton, famous for the Crystal Palace design,
Right.
proposed this massive 10-mile loop of elevated railway through central London.
10 miles, that's huge, like the Circle Line Underground now.
Pretty comparable in scale, yeah. The main goals were twofold. Obviously, improve transport in the choke city, but also spur new housing development along the elevated route.
Smart integration. Did it happen?
Paxton's specific vision, no. But the need for better infrastructure was undeniable. It led to setting up the Metropolitan Board of Works, which did undertake huge engineering projects to tackle London's growth, so the problem was recognized.
Okay, now for something completely different. Thomas Wilson's idea for a huge pyramid necropolis on Primrose Hill, London, early 1830s. A giant pyramid for burials.
It sounds startling, but it was a radical solution to a very real, very grim problem in early 19th century London.
Which was?
Severely overcrowded graveyards and the serious public health risks that came with them. Disease, contamination. It was bad. So Wilson proposed building this enormous pyramid on Primrose Hill, 94 stories high, covering 18 acres.
94 stories, just staggering.
His argument was that this self-created space, stacking burials vertically, could handle London's needs for centuries, solving the land shortage crisis for burials.
It's quite something, thinking about how even burying the dead inspires such radical architectural ideas. Makes you wonder about space constraints in cities today.
Absolutely. How will we solve similar problems?
So why was this monumental pyramid rejected? It's certainly memorable.
Ultimately, the powers that be preferred sticking to traditional ground-level cemeteries.
Huh.
They went for a more conventional fix, creating these large landscape cemeteries on the outskirts, like Kensal Green. So Wilson's Grand Pyramid for London never got built. But the idea of pyramid mausoleums did pop up later in smaller projects. And interestingly, our source material mentions a later, similar, huge pyramid proposed as a mausoleum for a U.S. president, attributed to a Thomas Wilson, probably his son.
The idea persisted.
It did.
Okay, let's jump to the early 20th century. Antonio Santilla's Città Nuova New City, 1914. This was key for the Futurist movement, wasn't it?
Absolutely pivotal. Santilla died young in World War I, tragically, but he left this incredibly influential legacy through his drawings for the Città Nuova. Dynamic, visionary stuff.
What did it look like?
A future metropolis. Soaring, streamlined buildings with dramatic setbacks, interconnected by elevated covered walkways, multi-level highways for speed, lots of steel and glass.
Sounds very modern for 1914.
It's incredibly forward-looking. It explicitly prioritized modern transport trains, cars over pedestrians at ground level. You really feel that futurist love of the machine, speed, dynamism.
The drawings themselves are really striking too. Those sharp wedge-shaped buildings, elevator towers linked by bridges way up high.
Exactly. His whole vision pulsed with energy, embracing technology as the driver of city life.
And even though it wasn't built,
its influence was profound on architects, urban planners. You can even see echoes in movies trying to depict future cities, like Fritz Lang's Metropolis.
Oh, yeah.
Or Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. That visual language owes something to Santilla.
Another revolutionary idea from around then. Vladimir Tatlin's monument to the Third International, 1919-20. Very abstract, very symbolic. Maybe you could quickly explain constructivism.
Sure. Tatlin was a key figure in Russian constructivism. It was an art and architectural philosophy focused on, well, construction, using industrial materials like metal and glass, emphasizing function, and often reflecting revolutionary ideals. Very anti-traditional ornament.
Got it. So his monument reflected that.
Big time. It was conceived as the soaring, spiraling tower, abstract, made of metal, and designed to actually move, to rotate.
Move.
It was meant as this powerful symbol of the communist revolution and progress. Inside the intricate framework were 4 distinct geometric structures: a cube, a pyramid, a cylinder, and a hemisphere.
Okay.
Each was meant to rotate at a different speed, yearly, monthly, daily, hourly, and house. Different parts of the Comintern, the Communist International, propaganda offices, meeting halls.
Wow, the symbolism is really layered there. Different parts moving at different rates, representing progress.
Exactly. Why didn't this incredibly ambitious symbolic project get built?
Good question.
Several reasons. The precise engineering needed for that complex movement was never fully worked out.
Tricky.
Plus, the sheer amount of steel needed. In post-revolutionary Russia, facing economic hardship and shortages, almost impossible to get.
Practicalities.
And the Soviet government had other, more pressing priorities: food shortages, consolidating power. But even unbuilt, Tatlin's Tower became this huge icon for the constructivist movement, that embrace of industrial materials' dynamic form.
Okay, next, Eric Mendelsohn. Expressionist sketches, lots of unbuilt stuff in the early 20th century. Very sculptural style.
Mendelssohn was famous for these incredibly fast, expressive pencil sketches, usually of concrete buildings, very fluid, curvy, sometimes twisting forms.
What kind of buildings?
All sorts: dynamic skyscrapers, innovative factories. Some sketches even look surprisingly like the Sydney Opera House with those organic shapes.
Really?
Yeah. He talked about formed rhythm in architecture, inspired by music, but also nature, like the flow of sand dunes. He did build some important things, but many of his boldest ideas just stayed on paper.
Then there's Mies van der Rohe's Berlin Friedrichstraße tower design, 1921, a radical glass skyscraper.
Truly revolutionary for the time. Mies proposed this striking crystalline form. It wasn't just a simple box. The plan was really unique: 3 wedge-like shapes linked by internal light wells.
Why that shape?
Super clever, actually. It maximized usable floor space and let lots of natural light deep into the building. Plus, visually, it would have created this dramatic contrast with the older 19th century buildings around it in Berlin.
A real statement. Did it win the competition?
Despite being so innovative, functionally smart, no, it didn't win.
And speaking of influential competition entries that didn't win, Eliel Saarinen's design for the Chicago Tribune Tower competition in 1922. That one had a big impact, right? Even though it lost.
Huge impact. Saarinen's design was elegant, maybe less radically modern than Mies's Berlin Tower, but it had these graceful setbacks as it went up.
Setbacks, like steps.
Exactly. Step back. This did 2 things. Let more light down to the street level, fighting that canyon effect of tall buildings. And it created a more visually interesting silhouette, less blocky.
Made sense. Who liked it?
It appealed across the board. Older architects like Louis Sullivan praised its elegance. Younger ones saw it fitting perfectly with the emerging Art Deco style, which soon took over skyscraper design.
So even losing, it shaped the future.
Fundamentally shaped how skyscrapers were designed for decades, a really influential runner-up.
Our sources also briefly mention other, maybe wilder skyscraper ideas from that. El Lissitzky's horizontal skyscrapers, Hugh Ferris's apartments on bridges.
Yeah, those were really pushing boundaries conceptually. Lissitzky's cloud irons for Moscow, Ferris's atmospheric drawings of habitable bridges in Manhattan, groundbreaking ideas.
But maybe not so practical.
Immense structural and economic challenges, yeah, prevented them being realized, but still powerful, inspiring ideas that fueled more experimentation.
Okay, moving into the 1930s. Norman Bel Geddes' revolving aerial restaurant for the 1933 Chicago World's Fair. Sounds fun.
A very modern, very engaging concept. Bel Geddes was a big name in industrial design, known for that streamlined, futuristic look.
So a tower with a restaurant on top that spins.
Exactly, offering amazing panoramic views of the whole fair. Bel Geddes was really focused on the experience of spaces like restaurants. He thought innovative design could be a major attraction in itself.
Makes sense for a World's Fair. A big draw.
Definitely would have been.
So why wasn't it built? It sounds like a winner.
Probably a mix of things. The Wall Street crash in '29 hit budgets hard for the fair. Lots of cuts.
Timing.
Also, Bel Geddes, brilliant designer, but not a professionally trained architect. That might have been a hurdle with the more traditional planning committee members. Lack of formal qualifications, maybe?
Interesting point. Even with great ideas, credentials matter.
Sometimes, yeah. Especially back then.
Okay, shifting continents and decades. Edwin Lutyens' huge Byzantine-style design for the Catholic Cathedral in Liverpool. Started in 1929. Monumental scale again.
Truly awe-inspiring ambition. Lutyens designed this colossal dome, but in a Byzantine style, very different from the usual Gothic cathedrals.
Did they start building it?
They did, actually. Started in 1933, but they only finished the massive crypt level by 1941.
Why only the crypt?
Funding problems, partly. But then World War II hit, and construction stopped completely. After the war, the estimated cost to finish the whole thing had skyrocketed, and Lutyens himself died in 1944. So the project was abandoned. Plus, post-war, rebuilding bombed areas was the priority, not brand new cathedrals.
A casualty of history, in a way.
Very much so. Only the crypt remains.
Then, mid-50s, the legendary Frank Lloyd Wright. Even late in his career, he proposed the Illinois a mile-high skyscraper for Chicago.
Utterly audacious, even for Wright. He was in his late 80s, early 90s then, envisioned a building that would just dwarf everything else, about 4 times the height of the Empire State Building.
A mile high. It's hard to even picture. How would it work?
The proposal included incredibly advanced tech for the time, like atomic-powered elevators.
Seriously, atomic elevators.
That was the idea. Despite Wright's fame, his experience, the sheer boldness, the Illinois remained purely a vision, unbuilt.
Just too ambitious for reality.
Perhaps, or maybe the technology just wasn't there yet.
Okay, into the 1960s, Kenzo Tanji's Tokyo Bay plan. This sounds massive, extending Tokyo across the bay.
An incredibly bold response to Japan's rapid post-war recovery and the huge pressures of urbanization in Tokyo. Land was scarce.
So, build on the water.
Essentially, yes. Tange proposed creating this linear urban axis stretching way out over Tokyo Bay.
What would be on it?
Everything. Transport infrastructure, housing, offices, recreation. Basically creating huge amounts of new artificial land. Some versions even included prefabricated capsule architecture, very futuristic for the time.
Wow. Did any of it happen?
The complete radical plan, no. But the ideas, the bold approach to urban expansion, hugely influential, especially in Japan and other fast-growing places grappling with similar challenges.
Friedrich Kiesler's work sounds very different. A Ramstadt or Space City from the 20s, an endless house later, challenging basic architectural ideas.
Truly radical stuff. Kiesler was way ahead of his time. Ramstadt Space City was this asymmetrical, seemingly free-floating model, exploring free space, rejecting normal walls, foundations. How did he design? He hated starting with a floor plan. He emphasized designing in 3 dimensions right from the start. Very holistic.
And the endless house.
From the 50s and 60s. Equally unconventional. An elongated, kind of biomorphic swelling shape. Irregular openings, inside spaces just flowed into each other, no sharp divisions, and it was designed as a family home.
A family home looking like that.
Looks unusual outside, but apparently every curve and opening was carefully thought out for function and the inhabitants' experience.
Fascinating. Then Arata Isazaki's Clusters in the Air, 1960s. Tree-like megastructures.
Another compelling vision for urban growth. Sasaki imagined these large, strong central cores, like tree trunks, supporting horizontal branches. And these branches would be made of prefabricated modules. Each module could be a whole building or apartment.
So you could add or change the modules.
Exactly. Highly adaptable, scalable cities built above the existing infrastructure, allowing for growth, replacement, a revolutionary idea for city building.
Very flexible. Now, Archigram's Walking City, 1960s, probably one of the most famous unbuilt images ever. Those insect-like buildings on legs.
Iconic. Archigram was this British group, very conceptual, very provocative. They influenced thinking mainly through their drawings and publications.
And the Walking City.
Their most famous idea, multi-story, sort of ovoid buildings on massive articulated legs, designed to literally walk around, move to different sites as needed.
Could they actually work?
Well, the tech details in Ron Heron's amazing drawings were often deliberately vague, but the image was incredibly powerful.
What did it represent?
Different interpretations, sometimes seen as these self-sufficient survival pods, maybe for a post-disaster world, nomadic architecture, a critique of static cities.
That image of them approaching New York City.
Unforgettable, a potent symbol of architectural possibility, questioning permanence.
Then in the 70s, the group site proposed something really provocative for the Museum of Modern Art extension in New York, called Ruins. They wanted to build ruined facade.
Deliberately ruined, yes. A very conceptual, challenging idea.
What was the point?
To engage with history, memory, time. To question conventional ideas about newness and perfection in architecture by intentionally creating a sense of decay in a new building.
How did that go down?
Not well. Significant negative reaction from the public, the press. Many felt it was disrespectful, inauthentic to deliberately ruin a new part of MoMA.
I can imagine. Okay, Richard Buckminster Fuller, known for ingenious, sometimes far-out ideas. His dome over Manhattan, 1960s.
Classic Bucky Fuller.
Yeah.
He proposed a massive geodesic dome 2 miles wide, covering most of Midtown Manhattan.
2 miles wide. Why?
To regulate the climate inside, control weather, reduce air pollution. That was the main goal.
Wow. Feasible.
Fuller was convinced of the efficiency of large geodesic structures. He had done calculations showing material and cost savings the bigger you built them. But yeah, cover Manhattan, a huge undertaking. Unbuilt, of course.
Zaha Hadid. We mentioned her paintings earlier. Her design for the Peak in Hong Kong, early 80s. An artificial granite mountain.
That's how she described it. This was for a competition, a leisure club, and apartments on Victoria Peak. Her signature fluid, curvy geometry was already there.
And the granite mountain idea, where did that come from? Could you maybe unpack suprematist geology?
Sure. Hadid described the inspiration as the suprematist geology of the city. Suprematism, an early 20th century Russian art movement, emphasized basic geometric forms, squares, circles, lines, and dynamic compositions.
Okay.
So here she's drawing this powerful parallel between the sharp angles, the dramatic, almost abstract forms of Hong Kong's natural mountainous landscape, and the abstract geometric principles of suprematism. She translated that into architecture.
So the building looked like it grew out of the mountain, but with those sharp abstract shapes.
Exactly. Fragmented, dynamic forms intended to emerge from the landscape, reflected her background as a painter influenced by suprematism. Hugely acclaimed design, but didn't win the competition.
Jean Nouvel's tour Saint-Fin's Endless Tower for La Défense in Paris, 1992. A skyscraper that disappears.
A very different approach. The concept was a tower that subtly changed its appearance as it went up and down, gradually altering materials, reflectivity.
To what end?
To create the illusion that it was sort of dissolving into the sky at the top and melting into the ground at the bottom. An endless tower.
Very poetic.
It was a deliberately restrained, conceptually elegant idea about relating to the sky and the earth. It was part of a big competition for a landmark in La Défense, but wasn't chosen.
A lesson in restraint for skyscrapers, maybe.
Perhaps. A thoughtful alternative to just being the biggest or shiniest.
Okay, finally, Rem Koolhaas's Bangkok Hyperbuilding, 1996.
Right.
Fragmented, chaotic-looking megastructure.
Koolhaas conceived this as a hyperbuilding, very large, intensely multifunctional. It looked like this seemingly random collection of vertical and diagonal bits.
But it wasn't random.
Ultimately logical in its arrangement, apparently, despite the immense scale planned to be 4 times the height of the Eiffel Tower. The fragmentation was deliberate, intended to give the interior an unexpected lightness and airiness. It reflected Koolhaas's theories that maybe huge buildings shouldn't be monolithic blocks, but complex collections of connected parts.
Challenging the idea of a single, unified form for massive structures.
Exactly.
It's truly incredible looking back at all these unbuilt designs. They really do spark the imagination, don't they?
Absolutely. And they offer such profound insights into architectural thinking, technological possibilities at different times, and the societal aspirations driving these visions.
Yeah. Even though they're unrealized, these phantom architectures still have a real influence on discourse, on inspiring new designers.
Definitely. They're a powerful reminder that a truly innovative idea can transcend its physical form. Its power lasts.
So here's a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Which of these unbuilt designs strikes you as the most compelling, and why?
Good question.
And maybe think about how our cities, our environment might look today if some of these really radical ideas had actually been built.
It really makes you contemplate that balance, doesn't it? Between boundless architectural possibility and all the constraints, money, politics, technology, tradition.
It certainly does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating and often inspiring world of phantom architecture.